Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSLead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
Welcome back to another episode of MSLead Chronicles. I am your host, Chad Fellers, along with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you, Mary?
I'm terrific as always.
Yes.
How are you?
Yes. Doing pretty well. Summer is here. It is hot and humid outside. I like to be able to take just like a 5 or 10 minute walk between calls, a call in the morning, in the afternoon, etc. And I can't do it anymore without it just drenching in sweat. So got to figure out another way to do that. I want to be able to get outside, but I can't take 3 or 4 showers every single day, right? So I don't know what it is. How's it like in Texas? I'm sure it's the same.
We're almost at that point where, instead of them talking about like the wind chill factor, they start talking about the heat index and the I don't know if they do this up there, but there's like the air quality, and they're like, some of them are they say don't go outside, stay inside. And plus I think they have the big Saharan dust storm stuff going on too.
You've been learning from your son, who's going to be a meteorologist, apparently.
That is true.
Yeah.
Like if anything, if the weather starts feeling weird, Paige and I go, Liam, like yesterday, Liam, what's going on in Lubbock? And he says, give me a second. Okay, a tornado has been sighted on the ground. Like it's on the ground, it's traveling. Do you know anybody in Lubbock? If you do, you need to let them know they need to go inside and they need to get into their shelters.
Wow. He's going to be
they
one
have
of those
underground
passionate
shelters
ones.
in Lubbock.
He's going to be a passionate meteorologist. That's going to be it's going to be fun to watch down the road. Down the road.
I know. I can't wait.
Looking forward to the conversation today. I know we've had some great interviews the past couple of weeks, or a couple podcasts rather, and with Lee Gervitz and then Chris Hansen. We've learned a lot with some great guests here over the recent weeks. Good interviews with them, and I think that kind of tees up really the conversation you and I were going to have today, a little bit more lighthearted, but it was around interviewing, right? And some of the things that you've heard from candidates and hiring managers, things that I've heard in the midst of hiring process, of things where things just go completely wrong, and it's either from the candidate side or the hiring manager. So I think that there can be some stuff that we can learn today, right? That our listeners can learn. And if they don't learn something, they can at least learn to laugh and have that.
Well, I mean, I think this is one of these conversations you and I generally have alone. Yeah. If we're just like unwinding and going, I got to tell you this story has happened. And these stories, like you said, they're too good to just keep to ourselves. Of course, all the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Well, they're not innocent,
but they're lessons, right? It's leaders learning from leaders, and there's going to be opportunities for us to share things that your people have, the hiring managers have done, maybe in ways they shouldn't have. And then, candidate mishaps as well. So
let's dig into it.
Well, I mean, before we do that, as has become my habit lately, I've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you, Chad.
Oh, okay. Let's do. I like these.
Yes, I do too. So
I like them when you ask others, not necessarily when you ask me. So we'll see.
Well, I have to go with the first one, even though I know a couple of the potential answers for this question, but we've asked the last several guests the same question. So I want, even if I know the answer, I want to give our listeners a chance to hear your answer.
Okay.
What would your walk-up song be?
Bring 'Em Out by T.I.
Really? Okay. And why did you choose that one?
I don't know. It's just kind of upbeat, a lot of energy, and I don't know. I don't take myself very seriously, so I thought it was just kind of a fun, humorous type of uh, song to do. So yeah, that's one of the ones that I think that comes to mind. So how about you? What would yours be?
Who is on the hot seat right now? It's not me, it's you.
We are kind of tied to the hip at times on this show.
Yeah, that's true.
So what about you?
I don't know. Okay, so there are a couple of songs that make me, when people say, what is a song that just, you can't not dance when that song is on.
Okay.
And actually, if Paige was here, she would jump in and tell you it's Short Skirt, Long Jacket by Cake.
Okay.
I challenge anybody listening to turn that song on
And
not feel at least your like shoulders moving back and forth or your head. You can't help it.
Okay.
But there are two other songs I really like that I think are great to start your day with.
Okay.
One is a song by a band called Surfaces. They're a Texas band. And it's called Sunday Best.
Okay.
It's some of the lines are feeling blessed, never stressed. Got my
Putting
sunshine
on my Sunday best.
On and my Sunday best.
So maybe we post some of these links to these songs, or at least do these shout outs on when we post our podcast on this, so listeners can get a sample of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think it's interesting that I have just gone on for 5 minutes when you asked me the question and I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I actually do have some of this.
So like if I could combine songs and it was a long walkout, like if I was walking like a long way, not just like this short entrance up onto a stage, I would love to be able to mix 2001 Space Odyssey with Back in Black.
What do you mean? Like, what do they call it?
So you start out with
mashup?
2001, and then after it gets to the climax of the song, and then just hit the and just go straight into.
I like it.
Yeah. But it's it would be like you'd have to be going into like a convention center and walking down the aisle, or kind of like the Hunger Games when they're walking all the way down, hopefully not being killed, all that kind of stuff. Okay, what's your next question?
All right. Since you turned the question back on me, those are the two questions. And I really can't think of a better segue into talking about interviews than the Hunger Games. So
let's do it then.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce it, as you were just about to before I interrupted you with the question.
I'm glad I selected the Hunger Games. That just came randomly on this. So, Mary, let's dig into this. Let's start with some stories that you may have heard or that we can share around where candidates have mishaps in the midst of conversations, or things go completely off the rails.
We'll call this candidate Katniss in the spirit. No, actually, this is a man. So we're going to call this candidate PETA in the theme of the Hunger Games. So, so this is a candidate that was, this will tell you about how long ago it was. There was a candidate that was interviewing in person.
Okay.
For an MSL position with Roche in Nutley, New Jersey. I don't even know if they still have operations in Nutley, but it's funny because I literally just told this story to somebody yesterday, and the person I was telling it to was like, I used to work at Roche and they are super buttoned up. So, or at least they were back then. So he's like, this story totally makes sense. So PETA arrives on time to his interview, and he goes to he's escorted to the location where he's supposed to have the interview, which is like right outside this conference room. And the interviewer met him there, and they were supposed to be in the conference room. And he was like, "Shall we go in?" And she said, "Well, there's some people still in the conference room." And so he's sitting there looking at his watch. He's like, "Well, this is really rude, don't you think?" And he said, "I'll take care of it." So he gets up. He like people knock on the door and open it at the same time. So he knocked on the door, opening it at the same time, into this conference room. And it was a conference room, big long table full of lots of people. Definitely a bigger room than what they needed for their interview. But and PETA says, "Excuse me, but you guys are running over, and we're supposed to have this room right now." Well, what PETA didn't know was that the people who were occupying that room was the Hoffman LaRoche Global Executive Team. And the person at the head of the table was the CEO from Switzerland, the CEO of the entirety of Roche. And so PETA was escorted. I mean, he had to know that. Well, I mean, he had to know he wasn't going to get the job, but he was escorted by security from the building.
You were the weakest link. Goodbye. Wow.
Yes, exactly. Or whatever that one game show is where like they open the floor and you just drop out from under it. I think that was like an Ellen DeGeneres game show, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've had a few that come to mind as well too. Candidates. This was not one that. The first one I'm going to talk about is during the COVID years, when we just went to virtual on all the interviews, and this was a finalist presentation. So there was panel. It was basically sharing. The candidate was in essence staying online to the one link, and then different interviewers would hop on and have conversations. So we had two in the morning. Then there was a short break, maybe for lunch, and then to wrap it up at the end, and then a couple more following. So the interview started off really well. Conversations went well from a couple of different people, screening, etc. I was actually a part of a couple of different conversations with this person. And I was so it came to the break time, and instead of turning the camera off, the way that the setup was in their house, it was facing a door. And
so like behind the person.
So like behind it. So first, when went on lunch break, didn't turn the camera off, ate the food right in front of the camera, and was basically chewing without mouth closed. But there was nobody else was engaging, and it was just, that was an interesting thing. And then she was talking with her her significant other, and she goes to the door, opens the door, and then goes on a smoke break as well too. And so some of those things you just don't, you have to be mindful of making sure your camera's off a little bit. I don't think it went very well. Needless to say, we ended up moving on and going with different candidates, who was definitely the right candidate, but that was a brutal mistake made by this particular individual.
Did the candidate at least have the sense to mute herself, like while all this stuff was going on, or
sitting there?
Were there any conversations going on that you got to listen in on?
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, she was actually in the midst of trying to move, and so she was I think working off of a box. I mean, it's a very empty apartment complex, which that's completely fine. But the way the setup was, and she was having those kind of conversations with her significant other while on that break, without the mute, without the video being turned off. So
Any
always
interesting
make sure.
questions, or just like talking about the weather?
I think there was some cursing in there every once in a while, and some frustrations just about different things, not necessarily about the day of how things were going.
Oh,
Although
okay. Like I was like thinking,
no,
was the person like saying something about one of her interviewers, like, "Oh,
no,
that person's a dope," or something
no.
like that?
But this kind of thing, like that, is something that it's almost like one of those dreams that you're dreaming that you went out on you show up at the playground when you're a kid and you don't have your clothes on, or those types of things. You're hiding, like some of those types of dreams people have. I wouldn't say I've ever had those dreams. Well, maybe I have a few years ago. I'm not sure, but that's what that scenario was, right? It was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that, and I don't think she even realizes that to this day.
Oh my gosh!
So anyway, how about you? What's another
Wow.
one?
Oh, okay. So since you're, I hadn't even thought about mentioning this one, but since you started talking about like the COVID era video interview thing, so this happened. Um, this was not somebody that I was representing, but I got the story from my client. So, so this particular candidate was doing really well throughout the whole interview, and they were at the presentation stage. And I think during the COVID years, everybody had to learn to get comfortable with platforms that they didn't usually work with, right? So
Yep.
It's not like not knowing how to share your screen on Teams, which I think was the big thing in the early COVID days. Like nobody,
Skype
yeah.
too, long time ago. Yeah.
This particular candidate had been doing great throughout the interviews, and they were at the presentation stage. And obviously, when you're video presenting, you're sitting. You don't have to stand up to present, right? But and so this candidate thought the only thing that the interviewers could see was his presentation on the screen. But I mean, I think you'll agree that anybody who presents, including myself, you just are more dynamic when you're standing and walking and moving around.
Yeah.
Well, this was on a platform he wasn't accustomed to using, and there was a little box of him at the bottom of the screen that I guess he didn't notice or didn't realize or whatever. And
pants on,
like a lot of people, it's like business on the top, party on the bottom, or whatever. And so when he got up and started walking around, with his nice shirt and tie and coat, he had on boxer shorts. And so he's pacing around while he's presenting. I mean, he's not even looking at notes. He's doing a great job in the presentation. But
literally.
well, I don't know if they got to see that side of him, but it was and they didn't hire him. I don't know if that's why.
Is that dressing too casual? Would that be the reason? Not showing up prepared? Is that would it fall under that category, or
maybe? I think the lessons that we learn from these video interview situations is, make sure you're aware of how your electronics are working, and
that's right.
And I make if you're not gonna put on pants, that's okay. Just don't stand up.
I don't even know how to make humor out of that. I
bless his
can't
heart.
really top it. Yes, bless his heart. Bless his heart.
Do you have any more candidate stories?
I don't. It was one we're talking about not being prepared or those types of things, or something that the wool I think was pulled over my eyes as a hiring manager. Great interview on the phone, like these initial conversations. MSL for 10 plus years. So knew the way, knew the ropes. Okay, came time for presentation. So had my VP come, the CMO, and a few others on the team, and it was time for presentation. And this person, you send, the way that I typically do it is, hey, I send them a few different articles, pick one that you want, do whatever it is to tell a story out of those 3 or 4 articles. She took the one phase 3 publication, and literally, I'm not joking, literally copied and pasted the article into PowerPoint and read the slides. Now, sitting there thinking, like, you have 10 to 15 years of experience. It's almost like one of those kids, like the star athlete, although this isn't the perfect analogy because this person certainly wasn't a star, but like gets past, graduates each class and advances, even though that they wouldn't have been prepared to do it, or really
Leave no
excel
child
at the job.
behind.
Yes, exactly. This was apparently a reason, leave no MSL behind, because I couldn't believe she was a senior MSL, had 10, 15 years of experience. And that's, and asking, like, how do you secure a second appointment? And it was like, well, I'll basically set up questions, to where off-label information can be provided. And I mean, all these warning signs or things of, you wouldn't want to have your team represent. She did that all in front of me and my boss and my boss's boss, and wasn't a great look, for me, even as a hiring manager. Like, I brought this person in, and this was kind of the result that was given. So yeah, that's another story. And then I'm gonna be transparent about, I have a candidate story from myself as well too.
Oh, let's hear it.
So I was trying to break into the MSL role. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride type of thing. But always get to the oftentimes get to the finalists. And unfortunately, I didn't use a recruiter to help guide me through the process. Like, you would have been a great resource, or your team would have been a great resource. Didn't have that. It was with Novo Nordisk, so was picked up in the black car, taken there from the airport, and all this kind of stuff, and feeling pretty good. And I was like, well, like, MSL fashion, I'm just gonna Google real quick and see if anything has recently happened at Novo. And that very day, they had gotten positive results from a phase 3 trial on that. So we get into right before the presentation components with the entire team. And I think I'm just going to kind of bring this up, just kind of passively, in conversation. Hey, congratulations on the recent, it wasn't even, well, actually it was the same therapeutic area. Congratulations on this. What a great, how exciting for the company. And they're like, so tell me about that trial. Tell me what was the name of the drug again? Could not remember. I did not know any of the specifics. It was literally, I tried to do it as just like, hey, this is going to be something that they'll receive me well. It'll be a connection point, blah, blah, blah. It had nothing to do with the actual presentation component, but it was another drug within the therapeutic area. So, needless to say, I could tell by the responses on, I can read people pretty well, and notice that, my lack of being able to respond completely to it, kind of set things up for the rest of the day to not go very well. So I had to go through the presentation, had to go through a couple more interviews, didn't get the job, unfortunately. So that was a learning opportunity for me. Definitely, is if you're going to bring something up, you better be able to back it up a little bit, even if it's done with good intent. So that's a story. I don't think you've heard that one before, have you?
No, I haven't. If you couldn't tell by the look on my face. Yeah. And yeah, hopefully anybody who's job interviewing is listening to these uh-ohs, these oopsies, and they're like, okay, I need to be cognizant of that. That last story was really interesting because I would say, at least for my kids, I don't know where this generation started of being headline readers. But at least my youngest, he will, come to me with a, hey, did you hear about such and such? And it was a headline, which I'm sure you would have read that whole article when you had time.
When I had
My
time, yes.
yeah, because you were on your way to the interview. But no, my kid would say, oh, like I remember one example. I don't know if anybody who's listening is going to remember this, but so Snoop Dogg, a notorious partaker of the herb, did a commercial where the headline was Snoop's quits smoke. But that was something actually Liam brought. Did you hear that Snoop quit smoking weed? And I said,
it was a brand instead, wasn't it?
And I knew exactly what he was talking about because I had watched the whole commercial. And it was Solo Stove. Have you seen the Solo Stoves?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they've got this whole system where the smoke just kind of goes back in.
Yep.
Anyway, he had done a commercial for a Solo Stove. And I said, really? Where did you read that? So I know a Nordis, Kim.
Yes.
We didn't call it that at the time because I didn't know your story, but
I think I actually Googled that while I was waiting in the waiting room to go in. I was just Googling anything about news, and I think that popped up, and I thought I would bring that up. That was not the best play by me.
Well, I mean, what you can learn from what our listeners can learn from that is maybe instead you can say a news link just popped up. I haven't gotten to read the article yet, but I saw the headline. It sounds like it's going to be an exciting read. So what can you do with that?
It's true.
Differently now, but
very true.
Yeah, but you know what? It all worked out in the end. Look at you now.
So I think so. So what about we've heard some stories from the candidate perspective. Any things you want to share or you've learned from hiring managers when they say the wrong thing and it the interview goes wrong from the hiring manager's perspective?
Okay, so I think that I'm really glad that we're addressing this because I think a lot of times the presumption is that when something goes wrong, it's always the candidate's fault. Yeah. Or like if that person left a company, it was because there was something wrong with them, and not that they just made the decision to leave because the scenario was just more. It was not conducive to a positive life balance, whatever. So I think sometimes the interviewers can do wrong things too. So I actually do have a couple of here's a really simple story.
Okay.
And I think a lot of mine end up being like back in the in-person days, but this one example I want to give you, it all sort of happened really quick, and it's just like one thing that happened, but it made the person not want to go to work for this person. So the interview gets started. It's supposed to be a 60-minute interview, and it's in person. And so she goes into the office to interview with this person. And about 10 minutes into the interview, he just leans back in his chair, puts his fingers behind his head, and puts his legs up on the desk, like crossed, like almost like something out of Mad Men or something. And conducts the rest of the interview like 45, 50 minutes more. Totally relaxed. Like the way the story was going, I was expecting to hear the guy, open his mini fridge behind him and pull out a beer or something. But like he did the entire interview, the rest of the interview that way. And it did not really put off a very good polished and professional image of the company. And when those things happen, I just want to say, I feel like it's my obligation to share this kind of information with human resources. Like this is how you need to know this is how your hiring managers are conducting interviews. Because I think people think interviewees need to know how to interview.
Yeah.
I think maybe interviewers need to have some training too on how to handle themselves.
Oh, 100%. Yes. To me, that's what you said there. I think it's in ways, it's maybe more that old school mentality where it's you you need to prove yourself to me that you're worthy of this job, versus it being a bi-directional thing of, hey, instead of trying to sell the job to the candidate as well too. And I think that that's kind of been the shift, especially with the generation that we're in now. Convincing people like this is, we got tons of options, like why should this be the best option for you? And that seems to fly in the face of that. It's more of like, no, you have to prove yourself that you're worthy of coming to work for our good place too. So anyway, that's bizarre.
Can I share an EEOC nightmare story?
Sure.
Okay. So in this situation, this is a company that I'd never worked with before. Like my introduction to this company was I knew the director of HR. And so she wanted to work with me again. So she brought me in, didn't know this MSL director and didn't have any idea what to expect. So, and this is where you kind of go, this person has not been trained on legalities and things like that in interview. So the candidate, female again, was, and all of the interviews at that point had gone really, really well. And this is like the final interview, sort of, I wouldn't say it was the blessing interview, but there were going to be
Sign
anything
off,
else
like a
after
sign
this.
off type
Yeah,
of thing.
maybe so.
Yep.
And just for, sort of setup, she was like 28 to 30 years old, probably. And this hiring manager says, so do you have any kids? And she says, no, 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 I don't. And he goes, are you planning on having kids? And she's like, I mean, why are you asking me this? If you don't, like, why are you asking me this? And he said, well, there's a lot of travel with being an MSL. I mean, that's a lot of time away from home. Like, and, you have to consider that if you're going to have kids, who's going to take care of your kids while you're gone? Or are you just going to stay here in this job until you have kids and then quit on me? And the thing is, it's not, I mean, this didn't happen like yesterday or last week or last month or even last year. But it certainly didn't happen in 1955. So This happened, I would say probably about 6 years ago, which is even still shocking because 6 years ago.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I told on that guy too. I mean, HR needs to know that EEOC violations are serious freaking business.
Yes. Wow. I think that there have been, I think it's easy sometimes to see where there's a lack of preparation from the hiring manager too, as far as like there's one extreme where the company has a set of questions that you're supposed to ask and just rotate through, just kind of these standard tell me about a time. And there are others that are kind of more free flowing and just, I've been a part where literally it's one question that's asked and there's just a lot of dead, uncomfortable silence. And there's no linear path or progression of certain questions to ask, follow-up type of questions, engagements, and that can really rub people the wrong way too, especially if they're thinking about, is this the person I really want to work for? There's no direction that's being given. There's no exploring certain things. There's no curiosity. Am I going to ever know where I stand? Am I going to know, how do I know if I'm going to succeed in this job? All these types of things too. So I think kind of back to that point we were talking about as far as preparation and trying to win somebody or woo somebody to your team, just like you're trying to woo somebody to be on a team. Mm-hmm. It needs to be both ways, because this is a really small industry as well too, and just one bad experience can still it can have a ripple effect for either the candidate or the hiring manager as well too, and it can follow them a long ways, right? So hopefully my experience from Novo Nordisk, now that I just shared it with everybody, doesn't come back and that serves as a follow-up question or a tell me about a time question years down the road if I ever look for another type of opportunity way in the very distant future. But this stuff sticks and travels, right? So both
And
parties
one
have
of
to
the
do their
interesting
job.
things about this situation too, just to show the guy has no EQ, he got back with us and said he loved her, he wanted to hire her, and she was like, no way. I'm not working for somebody like that. No.
Yes. Back to the candidate thing as well too. I mean, I think that I'm thinking about the lack of preparation of even knowing your audience and who it is that you're engaging. I think that I remember you mentioning, reminded me of the story of the person that I was interviewing, and um, we were talking about the diversity of the different types of people on the team as far as their professions, whether it's PhDs, PharmDs, MDs, PAs, whatever that is, right? And he was a PhD, and in his conversation, he was like, "Yeah, I, I gotta be honest with you. PharmDs I've found to be really difficult to work with. They don't seem to have the same type of scientific knowledge and all this kind of stuff." Well, I guess he forgot to realize that I actually am a PharmD as well too, and so needless to say, he did not make it through the screening or the first interview process. But you got to know your audience, and kind of maybe think about the different ways you might respond to working in a team environment that's cross-pollinated with different types of backgrounds. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
that's a good
Absolutely
one.
crazy.
Yeah, like rule number 1 is to know the background of who's interviewing you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Unless you want to insult them like that.
That's right. You can ask ChatGPT, right, on some of this stuff, and you probably can get a lot of information. So, yeah. Anyway,
So the one
any,
candidate that I
yeah.
had that at the end of his interview that he thought went well, and he went and asked the admin if she wanted to go to happy hour, that's a bad move, right? I'm telling you, I've seen it all. I'm writing a book.
So tell me, you want to go grab a drink? I mean,
Yes.
I can just picture him sticking his elbow down on the desk and leaning over and.
Yeah, it was the receptionist. Yes,
Oh
exactly.
my
You're
gosh.
visualizing it perfectly. You're setting
Oh
it
my
up perfectly.
gosh. Crazy. Any other things, any other stories you want to share?
I do have one more, and I have so many. But I am going to write a book, and it's going to be like one of those coffee table books that, you have all the funny stories in it, but I don't want to give them all away.
As long as it doesn't sit on the back of the bathroom toilet, right?
Well, I mean,
that kind
whoever
of
buys
reading.
my book can put it wherever they want to, as long as they buy
Okay,
the book.
fair enough. All
But
right.
this is one I actually had to tell the hiring manager, because this situation was not with a hiring manager. It was with the commercial counterpart, the VP of sales. And he did this with every single candidate. So he had a little bit of ego, this VP of sales, and he's actually now a chief commercial officer somewhere else. So I keep an eye on him. But again, this is one of those in-person interview situations. And so inside of his office, they, one of those little round tables with 2 chairs, for one-on-ones, I guess, that he would have with his team. So the candidate would walk into the office and I almost said his name. He says, "Have a seat." And it didn't matter which chair the person was going to. They would go around and like start sit. They'd be like halfway and he'd go, "Oh, not there, over there." Like it didn't matter which chair they were trying to sit in. And this happened with at least 4 people before I finally went, I'm not letting anybody else get tripped with this again. And I let him know, this guy's going to play mind games with you. This is exactly what he's going to do. Don't let it rattle you because that's what he's trying to do. But don't laugh like you know it was coming because then he's going to know I told you. And I did have to tell the head of medical affairs, hey, you know, this guy is doing this to your candidates.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, the whole point was to make the candidate feel completely intimidated and off their game. I don't know why to do that, but
well, so maybe it was
do you have an idea of
because,
why somebody would do that?
oh yeah. I think it's just a unique way of saying things don't always go the way that they're planned in the field. Like you have 30, I'm sure you've had this with some candidates before too. Prepare a 30-minute presentation and they say, get there and say, okay, I'm sorry, you only have 10 minutes to present, right? So how do you maneuver in the moments when there are things that are outside of your control? So maybe that was the approach to this. I'm not real sure. I mean, I think from a salesperson perspective, it's like, how do I push through when there are those types of obstacles? So maybe that was the rationale. Or it could be just a narcissistic person as well too, right? That just wanted to um, fully control the narrative that way and jack with people. Either way, that is an interesting story.
Yes, and I have tons more, but you know, to make the best use of time, I wanted to try to pick some of my diverse stories because some of them are kind of similar, but yeah, they're fun. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty more as the years go
Maybe
on.
this would be maybe to the listeners out there, if you have any stories that you want to share and pick up the phone or drop a LinkedIn message and have a conversation with Mary and I'd love to hear some of these other experiences that we can learn the hard way. Right? Sometimes we have to learn the hard way, and whether it's from us directly or from the experiences that we've been a part of, maybe we can use those for good. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do here, and have a little humor and laugh as well too. It's one of those weeks we want to be able to do that. So, Mary, this is a great brainstorming idea. I'm so glad that you. I would actually buy your book just for the record.
Would you?
Yeah, I do
Thank
need
you.
reading material in the bathroom, so that would be perfect. So
I knew you were going to say that.
I know. Well, anything else you want to leave with our listeners before we wrap up for the day?
Well, my unsolicited advice would be to the hiring managers.
Key takeaway. It's your key takeaway.
Okay. Key takeaway to hiring managers out there. If you have a particular interviewer on your interview panel that seems to have very consistent feedback every time, that maybe it's them and not the candidate. So give the candidate a fair shake. But I think if it's your team and your department, you need to make sure that the people you have that are involved in the interview process are representing you well. Because like you said, it's not just about this candidate's very lucky to be in front of us right now. And they'll be darn lucky to get an offer from us. I think that's not how the market is right now. Certainly not. I mean, I think some people still believe that there are candidates laying around everywhere. The great candidates that you want, they're not laying around everywhere. And we have to impress them as much as we want them to impress us. Yes. So I would leave you with that. And then, yes, I would love to hear more stories because I think we all need a little levity in our lives.
That's right. That's right.
And also, I would like to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there because this episode will air a couple days after Father's Day. So happy belated Father's Day.
Oh, yes. Happy belated Father's Day to our listeners out there. Thank you for the well wishes too, Mary. So
you're welcome.
Look forward to continuing conversations, right? This is all set for us to learn from one another. Thanks so much to our listeners for your loyalty and the great feedback that we continue to get around the conversations that we have, the style that we have, the experiences that we share. it helps accelerate the learning journey. I think I'm convinced, right? When we learn from one another. So, thanks for joining us, and look forward to having a conversation with you in the coming weeks. We've got some great guests lined up for the rest of the second half of 2025. It's going to be a good time had by all. So with that, we'll leave you. Have an amazing week. Lead well, and we will see you soon.